students. This is our part 3 of chapter 3, that is on arms trade and global arms industry. Okay, so from here we will have one more or two more lecture, then we will finish our syllabus. So see, if we talk about what is say global arms industry or what is global trade industry, so we can say that the arms industry or global arms industry is a kind of industry which manufactures and sells weapons and military technology, and is a major component of the military industrial complex, right? It consists of a commercial industry involved in the research and development, okay, engineering, production, and servicing of military material or military goods. For example, fighter jets or machine guns or modern say weapons, bomb, missiles, and so on and so forth. These are known as global arms. Okay. Now, these arms producing companies, they are also known as arms dealers or defense contractor, or simply as military industry. Just like we have various types of industry, so we have this military industry. It's a big business. Okay, that military industry produces arms for the armed forces and various military regimes of throughout the world, okay, or wherever they have the market. Also, they sell their weapons for civilians. Okay, that is why we have a kind of license system to have arms. Okay, so anyone can buy even a small arms, if not big one. It depends on national policies and so on and so forth. So all these things, whatever we have, say small weapon at our home with license, so it is a part of that global arms industry. So this is all about global arms industry. These are publicly or privately owned. Okay, these are obviously made, maintained and repaired, stored or issued in any combination to any nation state or any military. Okay, products of the arm industry includes guns, okay, artillery, ammunition, missiles, military aircraft, military vehicles, ships, electronic system, night vision devices, then laser machine guns or laser weapons, laser sights, hand grenade, landmines, okay, then cloth, helmet, glasses, okay, and various shoes and various other equipment which a military man need. So this is a big and a giant industry as far as we know, this global arms industry. This is a big industry. Okay, so now if we talk about this arms trade, then we have to see the global perspective, okay, of arms trade in our contemporary political economy. See, because trade is something where we sell because of something is in demand. Okay, so arms are in demand. That is why we have various arms industries. Now, before discussing this arms industry and their uh, profit and loss and their uh, uh, no, um, their regimes and their expansion throughout the world and so on and so forth, we have to know, concentrate fast on, uh, do we really need arms? Okay, and why do we need arms? These two questions we have to understand fast. See, there are two types of people, one who are realist, one who are idealist. Realist people will say yes, to secure our borders we need weapons. Why? Because someone who is our enemy, because someone who is our neighbor is becoming more powerful, huh, as far as military technology or military equipments or army or navy or air force is concerned. Okay, so we have to also uh, be at least equal to our enemy or to our neighbor and so on and so forth. Why we see, we perceive the growth of military in any regime, in any nation state, as a threat, okay, to our own national sovereignty and so on and so forth. Okay, so that is why we demand for modern technology and modern weapons and modern missiles or guns, modernizing military in a nutshell. Second aspect is idealists. Idealists say, why should we need, uh, say, weapons? We do not need weapons. We need more food to the people, right? More jobs. Okay, whatever we are investing in, say, uh, military equipments or purchasing of various military related products. So why don't we start investing in, say, food to the poor or employment generation or to raise our GDP, to work bit more on poverty elevation programs, okay, to see happiness among farmers or laborers. So idealist will say this and realist will say that no, we have to be careful and we have to protect our country. We can choose any ideas, we can choose any stand, we can be an idealist, there is no harm, and we can be a realist as well. There are various realist thinkers, there are various idealist thinkers as well. See, what should be the criteria then? The criteria is not a pure idealism and not pure realism, because war is not something which happens regularly. Okay, neither we should be pure idealist that there should not be or there will not be any war or any attack on us or any other country or nation. So the path would be in between realism and idealism. We should modernize our military, but we should not divert our attention and focus from, say, poor, from employment generation. Okay, in the nutshell, we have to work for our downtrodden section of the society. Okay, we have to work for our own people, and also we have to modernize our military. Both the things we can do simultaneously and we should do simultaneously. So the answer is not something in between, answer is both. Okay, now if we see uh, global issues as far as arms trade and arms industries are concerned, then we let me first quote uh, Eisenhower's phrase, that is, popular. What he said in his speech on April 16, 1953, he said, every gun that is made, every warship that is launched, every rocket that is fired, okay, signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, okay, those who are cold and are not clothed. The word in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hope of its children. This is not a way of life at all, in any true sense. Under the cloud of threatening war, it is humanity hanging from a cross of iron. So somehow Eisenhower is going a bit closer to the idealism, okay, where he is trying to support people, okay, where he is trying to oppose global arms industries and purchasing of arms and so on and so forth. Rather, he is saying that we must invest the money not in arms and arms trade, but in our scientists, in our labor, in our children for their education, health, and so on and so forth. Okay, so considering this, if we take, then we can say that the arms trade is a major cause of human rights abuse throughout the world. Okay, some governments spend more on military expenditure than on social developments. See, in the beginning I said there should be a balance between military expenditure and social development or welfare activities done by state. No nation should be entirely expending on one area, for example military, but it has to make balance. But here we have seen that there are various states, there are various governments who are spending more on military expenditure than on social development or welfare activities. Next is communication, infrastructure, and health, education. Okay, so they are not spending much here. While every nation has the right and the need to ensure its security, there is no doubt about it. In the changing times, arms requirements and procurements may need to change as well. Now, see, this arms trade is a big business, is giant business. Why? Because someone has created a fear of something. Earlier, before disintegration of USSR, it was the threat of communism that led to arms trade, and people saw the growth of arms industry, and various individuals, the various nation state, individual nation state were in arms race because of Cold War. Okay. After disintegration of Cold War, what we have seen is the rise of terrorism throughout the world. And to fight against this terrorism, every individual nation state almost is trying to modernize its military, and some countries like USA is trying to portray some nations as terrorist nations, or some nations as who harbor terrorist organizations, right? And to maintain democracy in those states, we have seen various wars in recent years, like war in Afghanistan, war in Iraq, war in Syria. Recently, before COVID-19, we saw a kind of tension between America and Iran. See, more than the terrorist camps and terrorist organizations, America has killed millions of people, civilians who are innocent, right? Here we must question the intentions of America. Because if you are fighting against terrorism, then why civilians are dying because of your bomb, and so on and so forth? Why you are no creating a kind of panic among uh, remaining states that terrorism, or Islamic terrorism to be more precise, what George Bush and various other American president has used this term, is a major threat to humanity and any country. Okay, we may agree, we must not deny that terrorism of any kind is against humanity and against sovereignty of a nation state. Okay, but what should be the criteria, or what should be the plan, or what should be the mechanism to fight against this terrorism? We have seen war against Afghanistan and killing of Osama bin Laden. We have seen war in Iraq. We have seen war in, say, Syria. We have seen clash between Iran and America. What is the outcome? Is terrorism ended? There is no terrorist organizations. There is no ISIS, or there is no Al Qaeda, or there is no any other terrorist camp in any state. I will not name them, name the nation states here. If they are in existence, then war is not the solution to stop terrorism. What is the solution then? Maybe dialogue, maybe interaction, maybe to provide more humanitarian activities in those regions. In spite of having military camps, they can have humanitarian camps in those underdeveloped regions of, say, Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria, and so on and so forth. Okay, if a nation is powerful, you can impose international pressure on that particular nation to pressurize it to control terrorist activities or organization, and so on and so forth. So there are various ways. War is not the solution. War may be used as a final staff when there is no chances are left, or no spaces are left. But before considering about war or using military this thing, army or air force, we have to create humanitarian and this thing aspect in those areas which are known, or which have been branded as the areas which harbor terrorism. Okay, so this is one point. Now, why arms trade? Coming back to our point, why arms trade is a big business or giant business? See, these 5 permanent members of United Nations Security Council, say United States, Russia, France, China, United Kingdom, okay, with Germany and Italy, these 7 countries account for around 85% of arms sold between 2004 to 11, and the figure is rising. We are in 2019, and we have also, India also has also moved from Russia to France during that period for Rafale deal. Okay, so these seven countries are actually having a monopoly over arms trade, global arms trade and arms industry. So it's a big business. Okay, now some of the arms sold go to the regimes where human rights violation will occur. Corruption often accompanies arms sales due to the large sums of money involved. And we have seen that in many cases, various allegations has been or have been labeled if any type of arms trade is there. For example, in India, we have seen the controversy related to Rafale deal, okay, and the corruption charges made by Congress or any other political party. Okay, we do not know the reality, but we are talking about the one aspect of government and second aspect of the say opposition. So here we have to be a bit clear about the stuff that someone is making allegation over some product bought for modernization of military, not only in India, in any other country. And we have varieties of examples here. Now, see, what is the word military spending in global arms industry? The word military spending had reduced since Cold War came to an end. But few nations such as the United States retain high level of spending as far as world military spending ratio is concerned. In recent years, what we have seen that global military expenditure has increased again and is now comparable to Cold War levels. The recent data shows global spending at over $1.7 trillion. Okay, see, the graph of this global spending on arms trade is increasing day by day or year by year. It is not coming down. It has come down in this year because of COVID-19. So we may see a kind of down next year when data will be prepared. And the reason is not that nation has become idealists or they are spending more on say humanitarian activities or welfare activities and so on and so forth, but because of pandemic that is known as COVID-19, and not because of their own intentions to work among their own people. Okay, so this is the main reason, and this is irony as well, that because of a global pandemic situation, arms trade is seeing a kind of decline. Otherwise, until recent past, it was growing very rapidly. The highest military spender is the United States, accounting for almost two-fifths of the world spending, more than the rest of the G7 nations. Okay, combined. Who are G7 nations? G7 is a group of 7 countries. It's an organization. Group of 7 में we have Japan, Italy, Canada, France, USA and UK. These 7 countries are known as Group 7 countries. So America is way ahead of these 7 countries. Now, next point in this global trade, this arms industry is training human rights violators. It means somehow somebody is training those who violate human rights. Number one, a US military training school, the School of Americas, has trained many of the worst human rights violators and dictators in various Latin American countries. You can find it online. Second is, some of the worst dictators and human rights abusers in the developing world have passed through the school's doors, including people like Roberto, okay, from El Salvador, and Manuel, okay, of Panama. Third is, the US Army maintained that the school was set up to preserve democracy. Which type of democracy? To abuse human rights? We have seen human rights violations in Afghanistan, we have seen human rights violation in Iraq, we have seen human rights violation in Syria, we have seen human rights violation in, say, Iran, and we have seen human rights violation in various Latin American countries. So is this exercises for maintenance of democracy? No, this is not for maintenance of democracy. This is a typical case of human rights violation because of these arms industry. Now, military propaganda for arms sales. See, arms contractors and maintain simply that arms sales are essential to foster good relations and also create more jobs at home. What is that? Number one, arms companies selling to one country will often demonize their neighbors. Those countries are then demonized to us, so we purchase more. That does not foster good relation, typical business relation. Second is, often to secure a sale, the manufacturer of the arms also goes to the targeted nation. Therefore, jobs are created but not at home. Jobs are created where the actual company is. Second is, propaganda comes in various forms, often via manipulative advertisement companies. Third and last, arms corporations benefit from alliances like NATO, we know it, and conflicts such as Kosovo, where opportunity for sale increases. Okay. What is the impact of small arms, which we discussed in our beginning of our lecture? See, small arms simply cause 90% of civilian casualties, which is used for, say, murder or any other crime and so on and so forth. There are two, we can divide it into two broad categories. One is the growing availability of small arms has been a major factor in increase in the number of conflicts and crimes. Second is, in modern conflicts or crimes, over 80% of all casualties have been civilians, innocent civilians. 90% of these are caused by small arms. Okay, so small arms is also creating a kind of panic situation. What is, there should be a code of conduct or not? Simply, there is a there had been various efforts to have a code of conduct for arms sales. The arms trade is one of the most corrupt traders in the world, fueling conflicts and poverty in various nations. Since the early 1990s, there has been efforts to review and develop arms transfer principles and code of conduct to ensure that arms are not sold to human rights violators. The US, United States obviously, EU means European Union, and others have developed some codes. but they are fraught with problems, loopholes, lack of transparency, and are open to corruption. There is a proposed international arms trade treaty to overcome these limitations. However, for various political and profit reasons, some nations seem unwilling to agree to a code of conduct, because we cannot impose any country to follow certain code of conduct, whether it is proposed by United Nations or European Union or any other organization. Now, result is proposals are growing stronger for an arms trade treaty, and it suffers the same problem. Landmines are again major problem for arms industry, because it has created, in the past decade we have seen that sorry, many countries use this landmines against their enemy, or against intruders, or against those who cross borders to enter their nation. Okay, so this is something which is sometimes it is during wartime, using of say landmines can be justified, but during normal times using of landmines cannot be justified. Okay, we have to develop our own infrastructure to find various types of problems, okay, a nation face, and certainly not the landmines. Now, military aid can be controversial. It simply stated aim is usually to help allies of poor countries, okay, to fight against terrorism, counter insurgency, or to help suppress drug production. Military aid may even be given to opposition groups to fight nations, which was commonplace during Cold War, where even dictatorships were tolerated or supported in order to achieve geopolitical aims. This aid may be in the form of training or giving credits for foreign militaries to purchase weapons and equipments from donor country. Now, it is argued that strengthening military relationships can strengthen relationship between nations and military aid. It may be to achieve that, but it seems some aid goes to oppressive regimes which may help with geopolitical aims but not necessarily help the people of the recipient nation. Obviously, last point is corruption. We have often hear that leaders from rich countries telling poor countries that aid and loan will only be given when they show that they are stamping out corruption. While that definitely needs to happen, the rich countries themselves are often active in largest form of corruption in those poor countries. Okay, and many economic policies they prescribe have certain problem of corruption in some way or other. Corruption in developing countries definitely must be high on priority list. Okay, but so too must it be on the priority list of the rich countries as well, because we have seen the corruption, okay, in rich or developed countries as well. Developed or rich countries simply cannot say that they are not uh, corrupt, or they are completely corruption free countries, and so on and so forth. So this is our lecture on say arms control and global conflict. We have discussed various parts. What is the criteria to have arms control? There are certain parameters to have arms control. Okay, because we have seen the more powerful countries has shown the less commitment to reducing their own arms sustainability and continue to pursue their own national interest fast, and it affects many around the world. So this is the big hindrance in having arms control, okay, or control in trade of arms. We have to no be bit idealistic. In conclusion, I am saying, and we have to focus more on poor people. We have to focus more on uneducated people. We have to focus more on poverty, farmers or laborers, without avoiding our military requirements and military need to face any challenge from any group or any nation. We can do it by avoiding corruption, by compromising with our national interest. Any nation state can follow this. Okay, if we do this, we will have less chances of, say, corruption. Okay, and we will have a proper mechanism for military and for the people. That should be the criteria, and that should be our economic perspective as well, where to spend and where not to spend. Okay, we have to spend very carefully, and we have to spend on people and on our army, sorry, to have healthy nation and to have a strong army. Okay, so we will have our next lecture on knowledge system maybe tomorrow. Stay tuned to the channel. Okay, thank you very much.